Meeting in person for the first time in 2 years with the theme Relatives of Ours. We bring you the beginning of the 39th Annual Elders and Youth Conference. Telling Alaska's story. We'll meet 2 Alaska Native artists whose work is on display right now and hear what inspires them to give a voice to the voiceless.
In total, more than 40 million Americans can stand to benefit from this relief.
The formal application is finally out for the President's Student Loan Forgiveness Program. How to sign up and how long will it take for you to see that relief?
Unseasonably warm weather continues for South Central, but high winds and heavy rain is headed to southeast, and another storm bringing rain out west. We'll let you know when the chances for snow return.
You're watching Alaska's news source.
Good evening, everyone. The 39th Annual Elders and Youth Conference got underway today in Anchorage. As Lauren Maxwell tells us now, the event is bringing more than 1,000 people and 100 speakers together from all across Alaska.
The conference is a chance for elders.
And she's going to have the mic right now, Kuyana.
And young people.
And I want to learn my ancestral languages.
To come together and share what they know.
You're welcome. What's your welcome?
We like to think of it as a culture camp, you know, wrapped in a conference that our people can come together, they can celebrate together.
Being together is a big part of this.
When you're around other natives, it's easier to feel more welcomed.
The conference has only been virtual for the last 3 years, and it's clear people have missed each other.
When you ask an elder if it's okay to hug, and sometimes I've been really bad about not asking and just hugging, but it just makes such a difference being in person.
Connections are part of the theme. Keynote youth speaker Christiana Edwards is hard of hearing. Her message, differences like disabilities shouldn't set people apart.
I want this world to not be so diverse and divided. I want our world to be just like all connected and see as each other as humans.
The Youth and Elders Conference is a place where Native people can make their voices heard.
That's one thing that we're really passionate about, is advocating for our people, and that's something that we're born with.
For the next few days, there'll be plenty of opportunity right here. Lauren Maxwell, Alaska's news source.
The Elders and Youth Conference runs through Wednesday at the Dena'ina Center. The Alaska Federation of Natives Convention kicks off on Thursday. Let's turn now to the weather. Not only dry this afternoon, but warm too. Melissa joins us now. Melissa, how warm did it get today?
Mike, we got all the way up to 50 degrees, the warmest that we've been in over a week. Not record-setting, but that is quite a bit above what's typical for this time of year. We're still seeing those warm conditions even at this hour. Live look at current conditions in downtown Anchorage. You can see those sidewalks are still wet. We've had some rain showers move through, but you can also see some blue sky there up over the Chugach Mountains this evening. Now that the sun is getting low on the horizon and just about to set, temperatures have fallen into the mid-40s. Winds still out of the northeast at about 8 miles per hour. And we're seeing those mid to upper 40s here across the Anchorage Bowl and across much of South Central. Some isolated showers in Seward, and we're seeing some shower activity picking up across Prince William Sound, but otherwise relatively quiet conditions here in South Central. And we're seeing relatively quiet conditions for the entire state. But we have 2 storms lurking in the distance. One that is going to bring wet and windy conditions to western Alaska later this week, and one that is pushing just now into the northern Pacific that will bring very wet and windy conditions to southeast starting tomorrow morning. And for that storm, we already have flood watches and high wind watches in effect for the northern reaches of southeast. We do have flood watches in effect from Juneau through those northern channels all the way up into Yakutat, along with high wind watches for Yakutat and for Sitka. This storm again moving in tomorrow morning. I'll have more details on that a little bit later in the newscast, but in Anchorage, staying quiet tonight. Might see an isolated shower pass through. Temperatures, though, holding in the mid-30s overnight, so any precipitation we get will still be rain. Tomorrow, another day with a mix of sun and clouds, and high temperatures back into the mid to upper 40s. Eventually, we will see another storm also pushing into South Central. I'll have the details on that here in a few minutes. Today, though, does mark 1 month since former Typhoon Mirbach caused widespread destruction along the west coast of Alaska. And while the repairs and rebuilding is just beginning, it's never too early to start asking, what could we have done better? Joe Bartosik asked that question of the National Weather Service and has their first thoughts. Joe.
Well, Melissa, providing critical impact-based information for the protection of life and property is the mission of the National Weather Service, and forecasters here in Alaska are just beginning to look at how they did and what could be done better in both messaging and delivery.
The scenes we saw along Alaska's west coast resembled one from a landfalling hurricane in the lower 48. Massive waves crashing against buildings and reshaping the coastline. Water surging inland and becoming high enough to float homes away. Yet there was one scene, strangely yet thankfully, absent.
You inevitably have injuries. You inevitably have loss of life, even in those states that prep for this all the time. So for us here in Alaska not to have loss of life injuries, those missing, I think, is a very good thing.
Praise for the National Weather Service's early warnings continued from the state's top officials in the days following the storm as response efforts were being mobilized.
The Weather Service did a pretty good job in predicting this storm. And so as an individual that lived out in rural Alaska, and I've talked with folks out there, people were preparing to the extent in terms of securing personal belongings, talking to neighbors and friends as to what's going to happen if this hits. Municipal leaders designating whether it's gymnasiums and other places for folks to go to.
Don Moore with the National Weather Service says confidence in the computer models grew high enough to sound the alarm about 1 week ahead of time.
We were fortunate in that we were participating in an exercise with the State Emergency Operations Center and FEMA on that Monday prior to the storm coming. And so we had immediate conversations with them early on in the event about the potential of the storm coming up. And so it really set the stage for us to make sure that we were communicating this early.
But nothing is perfect, and as the storm moved north of the Seward Peninsula, there were some critical challenges as there were only a handful of key water level observations outside of Unalakleet and Nome.
If something happens in the middle of the night, we're not able to monitor that, through an observation. So it's really with communicating with the different communities and hearing the impacts there. So it's definitely challenging for us to know what is going on at the moment.
But in a prepare for the worst and hope for the best environment, no loss of life certainly meets the goal.
And a formal report on the agency's service and performance will most likely be generated next year. Suffice to say, though, Mike, the well-established and exercised emergency communication channels worked extremely well.
All right, Joe, thanks so much. Well, the body of a Bethel man who's been missing since September has been found and recovered. According to Bethel police, 33-year-old Valdemir Kinnegak's body was found over the weekend by a bystander at Brown Slough Bridge in town. He was reported missing on September 22nd. An ID card in his wallet on his body was able to positively identify him. But the Bethel police chief says no foul play is suspected, but he says that could change depending on new developments in their investigation. Governor Mike Dunleavy says he'll be introducing legislation to hold drug dealers accountable for people who are directly killed from overdoses. The new legislation is meant to go after fentanyl dealers in Alaska. State officials want to make it clear that they will not be targeting those who are addicted or have any substance abuse problems, but instead, they'll be targeting those who are peddling the drugs. This is in response to a 74% increase in overdose deaths in Alaska in 2021. Now, there are three parts to the proposal. It will be restricting good time or mandatory parole for drug dealers. It will also be increasing the charges for accused dealers.
Currently, it's a manslaughter or Class A felony if an individual dies as a result of your dealing in drugs. We're going to increase this offense to second-degree murder. This carries a sentence of up to 99 years in prison.
Governor Dunleavy says that all of the agencies involved in this year's targeted efforts toward illicit drugs have seized 2.4 million doses of fentanyl, in the process saving countless lives. Well, President Joe Biden is reminding everyone you can now apply for the next round of student loan forgiveness. He spoke today as the formal application dropped after a beta version first debuted this weekend. Our Washington News Bureau's Jamie Bittner breaks down what you need to know if you plan to sign up.
This is what that application looks like to apply for the president's student loan forgiveness. It only takes a few minutes to fill out, and it asks you for things like your name, your birth date, your social security number. Scroll down and hit submit, and in 4 to 6 weeks, officials say you could see that relief.
I've been working with my financial advisor.
2020 Bridgewater College grad Bridget Fabiani is one of the people pouncing on the president's promise to extend student loan forgiveness.
It's honestly been more of a relief knowing that you know, when you're in undergrad, you know that it's looming. Like you're going to graduate and you're going to have to start paying it back.
It's easy, it's fast.
President Biden is eager to get the word out.
The new student loan application is now open. If you have federal student debt, please visit studentaid.gov.
Take a scroll through the application and the questions are easy to answer. No documents required.
We're going to make sure that there's not a lot of red tape here. We're going to get it done.
The student loan forgiveness is intended to benefit people making less than $125,000 and households with less than $250,000 in income. People with Pell Grants can get up to $20,000 in relief. Other borrowers can get up to $10,000. Student loan payments are also currently frozen through December 31st, and President Biden warns this is the last extension. As of January, you have to start making those payments. Do you feel ready?
I feel ready. Personally, I'm in a good spot. I mean, it was always in the back of my mind. I always knew that it had to be paid, but it was nice to have that pause and to kind of get, you know, like your ducks in a row.
Once again, this is the formal application. If you filled out the beta version of the application this weekend, you won't have to resubmit again, but everyone has to get those applications in by December 31st of 2023. In Washington, I'm Jamie Bittner.
Still ahead tonight, telling Alaska's story through art. Two Alaska Native artists tell their stories when we come back.
You're watching Alaska's news source.
Art can be used to describe culture, and in many cases, it can highlight specific traditions. In this week's Telling Alaska Story, Cassandra Mansell shows us two Alaska Native artists and their wondrous creations.
Inside the ConocoPhillips Gallery at Alaska Pacific University, you will see and hear the imagination of an artist.
I realize that a lot of people look at Native art as being a moneymaker. I don't see it that way. I see art as a way to express myself. And that's the primary difference that I see of other people's works and my work.
Joe Sungatuk was born in Wales. He is an Inupiaq artist and an elder resident at APU's art program, working alongside his wife, Martha.
We're both artists. She comes from an artistic family herself. Her father was John Hoover, and she herself is quite talented.
His granddaughter, Violet, is showing her work here for the first time, inside this room full of intergenerational love.
I learned to value just about everything that I've done.
When he looks back on his work, he views it with fresh eyes every time and doesn't let criticism bother him, just as his father told him.
He said, let that be a reason to do better at it than the next time.
Nearby in the Leah J. Peterson Gallery.
Well, most of these drawings are about my concerns about Native issues, subsistence, climate change, and those that have gone missing.
Fred Anderson, born in Naknek, escaped his home as a young man. Now his goal is to create art every day.
I work nights, and I've done that for many years. And that's why I include the moon phase, the correct moon phase in my drawings. Whatever the moon phase is that day, I include it in my drawings.
He expresses deep emotion in his work.
Well, you can see the subject matter, what I'm dealing with. And to draw some of these very intense subject matter, you have to go there. You know, I have to go there. I have to feel it.
Giving a voice to the voiceless in his own memorable way. Cassandra Mansell, Alaska's news source.
Now, that art show runs from October 7th through the 31st, from Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. You can find the Sinunatuk Family Show in the ConocoPhillips Gallery in Grant Hall, and Fred Anderson Show in the Leah J. Peterson Gallery in the Carr Gottstein Hall, both on the APU campus. And coming up next.
Yeah, have a look at that full 7-day and statewide forecast, letting you know when you can expect rain and snow to impact the state. But first, I want to show you the daylight hours for today, October 17th. We are down to 9 hours and 52 minutes of daylight. The sun will set here in just about 30 minutes as we lose 5 minutes and 38 seconds today.